Hey everyone, Georgie here with Ukraine Matters. Well, since yesterday, the situation hasn't really improved for Russians. It actually is deteriorating incredibly fast. And I want us all to acknowledge something very important, is that how well this time Ukrainian operational security is working compared to, for example, the offensive that Ukrainians did, that they tried to put this narrative about how they're going to liberate something, going to win big right now. And this time, Ukrainians are doing exactly what I hope they will do. They are delivering results first, and now everyone is happy that the results are there without them actually making advertisements of any big wins that they're about to deliver. But let's jump where Ukraine is. And I'm pretty sure if you followed my channel for the couple of last videos, you've used this map, you maybe followed the link. It's a really nice map because it shows fortifications of Russians. If you're here for the first time, what happened is that Ukrainians entered the Russian territory from the Sumy region, which is located right over here. And to put it in perspective, Kyiv is right over there. And since then, Ukrainians have been advancing quite rapidly. And I want to, for people that have been here before and now are wondering, well, how far Ukrainians have actually reached. Right now, there is a lot of names that are being thrown around, and when you try to put them on the map, you can get really confused. So I think a good starting point is this map over here. So this map over here is a conservative map. This is a map which was 100% confirmed that Ukrainian forces are there. Specifically, also the blue area is definitely something that is controlled by Ukrainian armed forces. However, this map is extremely unprecise just because of the Ukrainian operational security, and majority of information that we're actually getting from the Russian sources. It's coming from the posts that they're making on social media, such as, for example, they're laughing, we just destroyed a Ukrainian advancing column. We destroyed like 2 vehicles from that column. Here we go. There is a video. They're burning right over here. And then people are geolocating where that took place, and it's actually like 30-40 kilometers from the border with Ukrainian armed forces, essentially showing that Ukrainians have advanced deep inside the Russian territory. And yes, you heard it right. In 3 days, Ukrainians have entered the territory of Russia, penetrating it deeper than 40 kilometers deep. Like, the more accurate map, if you're looking for something like this, it is something this way. And in this map, you can see 2 very important things. We already can see and say something about the Ukrainian tactics that they're using. Point number 1, they are using a lot of fast-moving vehicles to try to advance on the main roads. You see that all of these advances are on the main roads. You cannot see it on this map, but if I, for example, switch to this map, you can see that there is this yellow road that kind of goes north from where Ukrainians have entered Russian territory. So these advanced units are moving really fast along the roads, trying to take the Russian defenses by surprise, and Russians are already describing what kind of tactics they're using. They're stating that Ukrainians have specially prepared, Russians call it the Ranger units, which are having these Thunder Run setup where they have infantry fighting vehicles with heavy machine guns that are driving forward across the roads, but this time they're improved. So Ukrainians were not really able to fully do the combined arms warfare during their summer offensive beforehand. And combined arms warfare means like when all the parts of the military are working together at the same time. It was really hard for Ukrainians to adapt, more specifically for the newly trained artillery units to work in a synchronous formation with the motorized units. Right now, Ukraine did something similar, except they are using the 21st century tactics. So all of these advancing troops, they have the electronic warfare capabilities, heavy electronic warfare capabilities, and they have specialized drones that are tuned to flight specifically in these electronic warfare fighting capabilities. So they drive in with these heavy units. but they send in front essentially a lot of these disturbance fields, like to disturb a kind of enemy drones, observers, whatever they have, any equipment, radios, everything. And then they send in first their specialized drones, like a lot of Ukrainian drones, to strike on the enemy positions. And as enemies are hiding away, trying to get away from these drones, like or trying to get away from exploding vehicles and so on, about around the same time, the Ukrainian fast movers are riding fast and essentially assaulting these units. Some of them are dropping off and they are engaging it. The others continue moving forward, capturing more and more territory. And then behind Ukrainian forward troops, there are more slower moving forces that are then reinforcing these fast advancing troops that have engaged in combat to help establish some kind of perimeter, to help establish additional fire control, and so on. So this is definitely a more thought through advanced tactics, and they are working great. That's why, for example, you might see sometimes settlements mentioned that are very, very close already to Kursk. If we're taking this map as a reference, then from this road right over here that is located right there, from here to Kursk is actually already around 25 kilometers. 25 kilometers from here to the nuclear power plant, which is located right over here. 20 kilometers. Plus, it's like it's going to cut off the road very, very soon, these forward moving Ukrainian forces. Moreover, Ukrainians are not stopping. If yesterday I was telling you about that it was just 2 brigades, these two firstly, like people says like, oh, Georgie, why you say it's 1,000 people? Because brigade is like a lot of people. Like, okay, brigade may consist a lot of people, but not all of the parts of brigade is a storm unit. There are also support elements inside of brigades. Moreover, not all of the storm elements of a specific brigade are always engaged. It's going to be specific parts of brigades engaged. So when I'm stating that there is at least 2 Ukrainian brigades operational, that means that there are units that are like the Storm, the Thunder Run units from at least 2 separate brigades that are participating. I'm not stating that the full brigade in a formation is marching through the Russian fields. The Ukrainians are advancing relatively fast. They are crushing Russian resistances. The tactic is super effective, and Russians are scrambling. They don't know what to do. So we already have reports that Russia tried to slow down Ukrainian advances by sending it reinforcements both from the mainland of Russia and also from the Kharkiv direction. And from Kharkiv direction, they are now in sort of a combat. They're trying to form something. But the guys from the central Russia, they were not prepared for this. They were defending essentially it's like an advanced police force that were sent in on the trucks. They were intercepted by these Ukrainian advanced forces and destroyed by drones and fast advancing Ukrainian forces. So the fast response units were already partially destroyed, and Ukrainians are continuing their advances in all of the directions. One of the major questions that I got yesterday was whether or not Ukraine will overextend. And my answer to this is, with 2 brigades, yes, but already today we get confirmations that more and more Ukrainian forces are flowing in through the border with Russia, and these forces that are behind them, they are the ones that are securing positions, taking over. So the fact that there are forward-moving forces like these fast movers does not mean that Ukrainians are not reinforcing their positions or taking it too fast. So no, I would not be worried that Ukrainians will overextend. I think this is all part of the well-thought-out plan. I got some reports after yesterday, because yesterday's video did pretty well, and a lot of these reports also came from some of the Ukrainian armed forces and so on, and some of them, they kind of like flown the number of forces that Ukraine prepared for this direction. If that number is true, because I have no way to verify, like, you know, it's a someone that I have never contacted with just saying to me and the number. I have no way to verify those numbers, but and I'm not. That's why I'm not going to tell you that. But if the numbers are true, then this attack is massive. This attack will turn a lot of heads, and it will really, it can be extremely devastating for Russians. But coming back to the points of the analysts, a lot of them, for some reason, were stating, why is Ukraine dedicating so much forces on this northern direction rather than reinforcing, for example, Pokrovsk direction, where Ukrainians are trying very, very hard to defend against advancing Russian forces. And I almost broke my face because of the facepalm that I had to endure after reading a lot of these comments, because I think it's absolutely obvious why Ukraine is doing this. Because this is the same argument that the same fucking analysts have been making for so long, where they were stating that a small Soviet army cannot beat a large Soviet army. So if Ukraine fights head to head with Russia in the resource war, they can potentially lose, and the attrition can be very, very bad for Ukraine. So when Ukraine suddenly makes some kind of surprise attack and switches the resource warfare that was fighting beforehand all along on the east, suddenly it switched to mobile tactical maneuver warfare, where the quantity advantage maybe cannot play such a big role. Suddenly all of these experts and analysts are asking themselves, like, well, why would Ukraine do that? It's like, are you stupid or why? Because what are the advantages of Ukraine versus Russia? Ukraine has better quality of troops and equipment, and they have additional technology that Russia don't have, such as the drone warfare that is much more advanced than Russian. Russians, on the other hand, have the advantage in quantity of resources and endurance to losses, so they're more willing to sacrifice more than Ukrainians. So if we go into the resource warfare, then a lot of these endurance and quantity play a big role. That's why when Ukraine now goes into the maneuver warfare, fast-moving maneuver warfare, they are now having advantage because the forces that are operating, they're operating fast-moving, they're able to outmaneuver their troops. Therefore, the more quality has an advantage, even if there is a bigger quantity. They have the field now to be able to get that benefit of quality compared to Russians. Moreover, technology. If before Russia was there sitting down in their multi-layered defense lines, sitting down in the underground bunkers, then right now Ukrainians have penetrated Russian defense. Guys, especially the ones that still don't understand the severity of this for Russians. Russia was not preparing for this at all. They were preparing maybe for small incursions by the partisans, but there is no fortifications in the Kursk region. There is no minefields. There is nothing that is stopping Ukrainians there. The only thing that may stop Ukrainians if at some point Russia just fields too much forces, but these forces need to come from somewhere. They're just not appearing from nowhere. Russia was absolutely not prepared for this. So when people are stating like, oh my God, this looks like a Kharkiv offensive that Ukraine did in 2022. No, it doesn't. It's not even close, because in Kharkiv direction where Ukrainians have fought, it was first fought against Russians. So it was first Russians that took over this Kharkiv territory that Ukrainians were defended. That area is full of defensive positions. That area is well prepared for any fortifications. There could be strongholds, strong points, minefields, everything that was there. So when Russians were retreating from that direction, running, Ukrainians were still sometimes struggling to move forward compared to what they have right now in a Kursk region, because there is nothing there. There is only civilian technology. There's civilians there. And Russian civilians are not resisting. They're not resisting because they get mixed messages from the Russian government. Because the Russian government still is saying, like, it's so silly. They are stating still up to this day in some sources that all of the advances of Ukrainians have been stopped. And it's also confusing the Russian propagandists, because Russian propagandists, the one that work for Kremlin, they are now struggling because on one hand, they need to report that things are maybe not as great, that the situation is kind of escalating, but on the other hand, they are stuck in this narrative that Russia built, that Russia is strong, Russia defeats everyone. For example, like, when Ukraine shot down Russian big planes, the radar planes, and they were claiming, no, it's actually our own air defense that was shooting down. Like, Ukrainians, they are incapable of anything. If we have losses at all in Russia, it's only because we inflicted them on ourselves. And now, because they're stuck in this narrative, their brain is just exploding. And the brain of Russian citizens is exploding and melting as well, because suddenly they get into a situation where they find out that 100 kilometers south from where they are right now, there is a war, an offensive war that Russia started, and that war is just starting to come home to Russia. And they are lost. They are not willing to defend their states. The country doesn't call them to defend. They're not handing out weapons for partisan warfare and so on, not calling for that. It's a perfect setup for Ukrainian advances, because the only thing that Russia right now is stating is like, no, army is already on the way. But Ukraine has defeated already some of that reinforcements. And I want to be very, very clear here, because some people really misunderstood what I was saying yesterday. They thought that, like, when I stated that, Ukrainians have the ability to, get and siege Kursk. They're able to capture the Kursk nuclear power plant. They're able then to encircle the group army north and fight them from the rear and essentially undercut their supply lines. Because look at the railroad network. So let me find you the place. So this is the Sumy region right over here. And here's Suja, that's the village that the town that everyone was discussing. And that's Kursk right over here. So if Ukraine just cuts through this a little bit more with the tempo that they have right now, then suddenly all these areas over here will get zero supplies because there will be no railroad. And that's going to be pretty devastating for the Russians. But we need to understand that it's obviously a threat. It doesn't mean that the war is going to end, that suddenly Ukrainians have like a free ticket to victory in this war, and the war is now like just skyrocketing to Russians absolutely collapsing. No, Russians still have resources. I mentioned that for Russians to stop Ukrainians, they need to pull significant forces from their current offensive operations. But this is not going to happen fast. Russian forces that are deployed, they are now engaged in combat. So to get them, they would need to do now is get out of combat, try to regroup, pack their stuff, pack their ammunition, put them on a train, get the train delivered towards the Kursk area where there is no defense lines. They need to arrive somewhere. After they arrive somewhere, they need to then start putting in trenches, some kind of defensive positions. They need to receive ammunition, equipment, everything that can help them defend these positions. Let's put it this way. It takes time to do all of that. And Ukrainians are advancing, and they're advancing fast. It is now a race against time for Russians to try to respond to these events. And the fact that today I go back, I open my map, and they said that Russians are still pushing and advancing in Avdiivka direction. That is the best freaking outcome I could ever hope for. The fact that Russians are still struggling to realize just how bad this could become is incredible. In the meantime, Putin just wishes the governor of Kursk to have courage. And a lot of people are also saying to me, hey, Georgie, maybe don't be so optimistic and so on. And I understand where you're coming from. You're coming from a place where you look at the map And then you see the incursion, and then you see the two defense lines, and you're like, well, Russians cannot be this dumb, right? They cannot just have two defense line and be not prepared and just literally defend the border of their country with just with no contractors, with just Kadyrovites and the young guys that were just conscripted. Like, they cannot be this dumb. I have an exercise, but I need you to do this exercise with me. It's very, very simple. I want you to take a big breath of air and then repeat after me. Yes, they fucking can. Because Russians, they are that way. They are so aggressive. They were expecting that Ukrainians will be so down on resources that they were absolutely not expecting what they're gonna do. Already now we have reports that suddenly Russia is now recalling forces from fucking Africa to try to salvage their operation. And these forces need to fly into Kursk, of all places. And I'm not completely sure if who will be first, the guys from Africa flying into Kursk or Ukrainian armed forces. Okay, maybe that is a little bit too much rushing. What's important beyond that is the response that we got from allies. It seems that the mental barrier, the fear of escalation, it seems that the Ukrainian diplomacy and the way that they were putting things and the fact that they didn't see any response from Russia, and Putin still claiming that Russia number one and we're going to defeat everyone, and not even threatening nuclear strike for some reason. We've seen response from Germany, from United States, such as like bitch slapping me on the face, saying, hey, Georgie, remember you doubted us that we're going to stop Ukraine? Well, it's actually up to Ukraine what they do with the weapons. We don't really see problems of Ukrainians using the weapons provided, like ammunition, armor, whatever. It's like, because there was already German weapons, German martyrs, and so on, destroyed on the territory of Russia. Yes, German tanks are in Russia again. There is a great benefit of what Ukraine is doing right now. I know that there are analysts that really want Ukraine to, fight this war that they really wanted to fight, because they thought that they understand everything. They thought that they understand war. They thought that, now the movement, everything we get and so on. But General Syrskyi and the command staff of Ukraine, they bitch slapped all of these analysts and says, sit down, boy, and let me teach you how it's done. This is great because this brings new motivation. This brings new resurfaced motivation, not only in us to see that Ukraine finally succeeds, but most importantly in Ukrainians. Ukrainians have had it rough. The hope for Ukrainians have been slowly but surely going down, and we need to recognize that. I talked about this. Now, what we see coming from Ukrainians, they are spreading memes. They are spreading how they are screwing Russia, and they're happy that Russia is getting back some of their medicine. And as Ukrainians are crushing Russians, we in this community are crushing the fundraiser for the brigades that are doing the Russia crushing. Yesterday we started when this fundraiser was at about 30,000 or so. Guys, we went over 160,000 from us and over 190,000 that was delivered to this fundraiser. We talked with the guys from the United Ukraine Aid Ops. They were able to reach out to some other guys, and this fundraiser is now a combined effort. It's combined efforts between us, between Combat Veteran Reacts, Warthog Defense. Thank you. Thank you to everyone that has been supporting Ukraine. And I want to say something very important, because there was a lot of people watching the video yesterday, so a lot of new people. Guys, YouTube is not my job. I'm not dependent on YouTube. So thank you so much for everyone that sent me a lot of money. I really appreciate money for the channel and so on, but the channel is not dependent on this. If you have disposable income, right now is the prime time, the crucial time to make sure we support Ukrainian armed forces so they get the resources they need to turn this into potentially a situation that can lead to Ukraine actually winning this war. So please don't do the support for my channel, though I really appreciate it. I do. But let's finalize, let's break this donation goals to make sure that Ukrainian armed forces break the Russian will to go on the offensive wars ever after. I love you. Slava Ukraini, and I'll see you next time.